sister might have very easily made life much more pleasant to the rector of Swampington and his only daughter, but Hubert Arundel was a great deal too proud to remind her of this. If Mrs. Mostyn chose to forget him, the brother and sister had been loving friends and dear companions long ago under the beeches at Dangerfield, she was welcome to do so. She was better off than he was, and it is to be remarked that if A's income is 300 a year and B's 1,000, the chances are as 7 to 3 that B will forget any old intimacy that may have existed between himself and A. Hubert Arundel had been wild at college, and had put his autograph across so many oblong slips of blue paper acknowledging value received that had been only half received, that by the time the claims of all the holders of these portentous morsels of stamped paper had been satisfied, the younger son's fortune had melted away, leaving its sometime possessor the happy owner of a pair of pointers, a couple of guns by crack makers, a good many foils, single sticks, boxing gloves, wire masks, basket helmets, leathern leg guards, and other paraphernalia, a complete set of the old sporting magazine from 1792 to the current year, bound in scarlet morocco, several boxes of very bad cigars, a Scotch terrier, and a pipe of undrinkable port. Of all these possessions, only the undrinkable port now remained to show that Hubert Arundel had once had a decent younger son's fortune, and had succeeded most admirably in making ducks and drakes of it. The poor about Swampington believed in the sweet red wine, which had been specially concocted for Israelitish dealers in jewellery, cigars, pictures, wines, and specie. The rector's pensioners smacked their lips over the mysterious liquid, and confidently affirmed that it did them more good than all the doctor's stuff the parish apothecary could send them. Poor Hubert Arundel was well content to find that at least this scanty crop of corn had grown up from the wild oats he had sown at Cambridge. The wine pleased the poor creatures who drank it, and was scarcely likely to do them any harm, and there was a reasonable prospect that the last bottle would by and by pass out of the rectory cellars, and with it the last token of that bitterly regretted past. I have no doubt that Hubert Arundel felt the sting of his only sister's neglect, as only a poor and proud man can feel such an insult; but he never let any confession of this sentiment escape his lips; and when Mrs. Mostyn, being seized with a fancy for doing this forgotten brother a service, wrote him a letter of insolent advice, winding up with an offer to procure his only child a situation as nursery governess, the rector of Swampington only crushed the missive in his strong hand, and flung it into his study fire, with a muttered exclamation that sounded terribly like an oath. "A nursery governess!" he repeated savagely. "Yes, an underpaid drudge, to teach children their ABC, and mend their frocks and make their pinafores. I should like Mrs. Mostyn to talk to my little Livy for half an hour. I think my girl would have put the lady down so completely by the end of that time that we should never hear any more about nursery governesses." He laughed bitterly as he repeated the obnoxious phrase, but his laugh changed to a sigh. Was it strange that the father should sigh as he remembered how he had seen the awful hand of death fall suddenly upon younger and stronger men than himself? What if he were to die, and leave his only child unmarried? What would become of her, with her dangerous gifts, with her fatal dowry of beauty, and intellect, and pride? But she would never do anything wrong, the father thought. Her religious principles are strong enough to keep her right under any circumstances, in spite of any temptation. Her sense of duty is more powerful than any other sentiment. She would never be false to that. She would never be false to that. In return for the hospitality of Dangerfield Park, Mrs. Mostyn was in the habit of opening her doors to either Christopher Arundel or his sons, whenever any one of the three came to London. Of course she infinitely preferred seeing Arthur Arundel, the eldest son and heir, seated at her well-spread table, and flirting with one of his pretty cousins, than to be bored with his rackety younger brother, a noisy lad of 17, with no better prospects than a commission in Her Majesty's service, and £150 a year to eke out his pay. But she was, notwithstanding, graciously pleased to invite Edward to spend his Christmas holidays in her comfortable household; and it was thus it came to pass that on the 29th of December, in the year 1838, the story of Edward Arundel's life began, in a stage box, at Drury Lane Theatre. The box had been sent to Mrs. Mostyn by the fashionable editor of a fashionable newspaper; but that lady and her